Welcome to the End Times Guy podcast. My name is Lee. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you joining me. This podcast is dedicated to the glory of God. And I have to just say it right up front. God has set it all up so that I don't have to ask anyone else for money. I don't want anyone else's money. And therefore, I'm not worried about what I say. I don't need it to be pleasing to anyone. I don't want your dollars. You keep them. You give them wherever you think is best. You know where I give my dollars? Open Doors USA. And this is the beauty of what God has done for me. And I don't mind sharing just to encourage you. The things that God can do in our lives is just incredible. Not only can I do this podcast for free, I can also give to Open Doors in a very generous way that I could never do before. And I'm so excited every month to be able to send a good amount of money because I know that they keep in administrative costs about 6% at the most. And man, 94 cents out of every dollar is going right down like Northern Africa, North Korea, China, Middle East, wherever our brothers and sisters are in real need. They're going hungry, they're going without food, they're being persecuted. Open Doors is right there, giving almost dollar for dollar, which I'm so thankful for. And as you're storing up your treasure in heaven, your heart goes there too. You care less and less about how much equity, how much status you have on the earth. Who cares? We're only here for a short time. Everything we accumulate in this world will be dust and ash, maybe in a year, maybe in 20 years. We don't know, but the treasure we accumulate in heaven will be waiting for us for eternity. That is, a really good investment account there. I'll guarantee you that's the best investment you'll ever make. And it's a joy to donate. And God has set me up in a place where I'm able to make that donation. It doesn't hurt me whatsoever. And I just feel awesome about it. I'm so happy with all that God has done in my life. Very thankful. And this podcast, I've tried many, many times in my own strength to do a ministry for God. And through this, he's shown me that I will never be a minister. I'll never have the strength, the dedication, the endurance, and all that's needed if I try and do it myself for God. The right heart is to just surrender yourself and let God. He's the minister. He's the one with the word. If you're willing to just allow him the room to do his work. That's what it's all about. So I don't need anyone's money, and that allows me a tremendous amount of freedom. I only want to share the truth, what will glorify God and encourage my brothers and sisters. And I'm sure your heart is the very same. What can I do to build up my brothers and sisters? I keep remembering that verse. I've got to look it up. That we encourage one another to acts of love more and more as the day approaches. And that's exactly what's in my heart, even though I can't remember the verse. Build one another up in acts of love. What can we be doing? How can we make a difference? Because practical living, as you read in James, is what it's all about. A person who studies and learns and preaches and talks, but doesn't live it, is like a man who looks in the mirror and immediately forgets everything. You can't live like that. It's got to come out through your life. Today I want to talk about the drag queen story time and just clarify that we're not dealing merely with men who identify as women, men who want to prance around as women. It's not cultural entertainment. It's not just harmless acting out, as some have called it. Those who call it such things are spiritually blind. They walk in darkness. They have eyes, but they do not see. They have ears, but they do not hear, and they do not perceive the truth. And the first thing I want to share in regards to that, I want to give a shout out again to activist mommy Elizabeth Johnson, who is working very hard at addressing drag queen story time at the local libraries. This has been going on for a while, and it's getting more and more serious. And she really is an activist. She's a mother of, I believe, 8 children. Her husband is a doctor. He's able, with his income, to provide for the family. She homeschools the children and looks after everything. A very, very busy woman, but somehow is able to do this incredible ministry alongside. And that's the grace of God. That's God working through us. He will manage to bring this ministry about in our lives that we never saw the room for. We never thought it was possible. We're so busy, but God says, hey, don't worry about it. I'm doing it and it'll happen. So I have a job where I work 80 hours a week, and the Lord is managing to find time in my life for ministry. What about you? I used to think, well, one day I'm going to minister, but not now. I've got a family to look after and I've got to pay the bills. And, you know, we're all called to the ministry in some form or fashion. And you have to allow God room in your life. He'll find the ministry, He'll bring it about, and you'll be blessed for it. But she is really intensely involved online, getting people to be aware of the things that are going on, like an 11-year-old boy dancing, prancing around the stage in a gay bar, removing clothing. Like, did you ever think you would live in a society where this kind of thing would happen? And not only happen, but it's being endorsed by the government. Oh, it's healthy, it's entertainment, it's just kids having fun. No, it isn't. It's pedophilia. This 10, 11-year-old boys, there's a couple of them, there's probably more now, in a gay bar, dancing on stage while all these men, these are gay men, sitting there watching a 10-year-old boy gyrate on stage. This is the exact same reason a heterosexual man goes to a stripper bar. It's purely sexual. That's all it is. It's not about being entertained. It's having a sexual fantasy. And so many of those strippers in those bars end up getting raped because those men aren't satisfied with just thinking about it. It always escalates to something more perverse. So she's been very outspoken in telling people where the next drag queen story time is being held. And then she's got this group called the Phone Warriors who go out and phone that library protesting. And it isn't long at all. I tell you what, they're not used to getting flack. The liberals are very thin-skinned. They're not used to being opposed like we are. So as soon as their phone lights up, they back down. And she has been incredibly successful in having these story times canceled one after the other. Well, evil doesn't take it sitting down. Evil is, what James wishes the church was. Action-minded, doing, not just talking, but doing. So they are looking for her address. They're looking for her husband's workplace. They're gathering information to begin protests outside her home to try and get her husband fired and everything else. Evil is not silent. Evil is not impotent. It's moving forward on her. And she's rightfully afraid and has hired security to protect her family. And her followers have actually helped provide the money for that. Praise God. I'm just electrified to see Christians coming together as a body and actually doing something. I almost fell out of my seat the first time I heard about this. And it raises the whole specter of the drag queen and its popularity in our society. And I want you to understand that, first of all, drag queens are nothing new. Men have been dressing up like women for decades. But the primary purpose, back before it was vogue, probably 30 years ago now, young men were dressing up as women, but they weren't dressing up the way they are now. They were dressing up to be pretty. They were dressing up to be feminine. They would wear dresses and high heels. They'd carry a purse. They'd do their hair. They wanted to be feminine. They wanted to be pretty. And that's what it was all about. And the reason they were doing that is because the majority of them were sodomized as an infant, as a child. They were sodomized by their father or their uncle or their brother or someone around them. A man sodomized them. And this is what happens. Child abuse in its various forms, unless there's healing, it comes out in bad ways. I was abused as a child, not sexually, thank the Lord in heaven, but physically, violently abused. And it came out later on through violence. And I was never violent towards people, but I became violent towards property. I began to destroy property, burning, smashing, breaking, whatever I could do, because there was a rage inside of me, a deep hurt, and it was looking to be expressed. Um, when a person turns to alcohol, that's a smaller hurt that they're trying to suppress, they're trying to cope with. This is much greater than, being betrayed by a lover or being in financial difficulty. This is a much more profound hurt, and it looks to come out. For me, when I was smashing or burning or tearing down or destroying, I felt better. And this is when they're dressed up like a beautiful woman, and that sexual confusion within them is assuaged. It's a way of making themselves feel better. That's it. That's not at all what we're seeing today with the drag queens. They're not trying to be feminine, they're not trying to be pretty. They are sexually motivated. They're dressing like not just prostitutes, but really, really bizarre, twisted, perverted prostitutes. And this all has a sexual foundation, and it's inviting hedonism is what it's doing. It's trying to tear down the societal norms of sexuality, which has already been going on for a very long time. But this is really a big battering ram at the doors of sexual normality, to tear them down, to open the doors to all kinds of sexual depravity. Now, you need to be aware that these story times, it's not a man in a dress sitting down and reading out of a book. It's all kinds of whatever they can get away with, basically. They're doing these very sexually charged dances and strip shows, handing out condoms, teaching on sex ed. It's all about sex. Sexualizing little boys and little girls, getting them involved in the sexual community. It's all just profound, very disturbing wickedness. And the activist mommy and her crew are doing the right thing. They are opposing wickedness. I'm not saying Christianity should be known by what we oppose, but there is a time and a place to say, hey, wait a minute, that's enough. Salt stings, light blinds, and that's what we're called to do. If the light is going to blind them, it's because they're in such profound darkness. And yes, the light will offend them, but it's for their good. So when you hear about drag queen story time, it's not about confused men in dresses. There is something so much darker at work here. It's the sexual exploitation of children. Have you ever wondered why it is they target the children? All of this is aimed at children. The story times, the shows, the parades, it's hedonistic and it's sexual depravity on display, and it's aiming at the children. Now, I'm not going to say I'm all-knowing, but I would have to say it's pleasing to God that we stand in the gap and protect the children. Not only with our prayers, the first line of defense is through prayer. If we have faith in the power of God, we will see profound changes that we could have never dreamed of. So the very first thing we need to do is be vigilant in praying against all of this sexual perversion. Not only with the drag queens, the kids are getting the same thing in school through sex ed. The very same garbage. Our children are being targeted everywhere they go. I've never seen children so vulnerable as they are right now. So the first line of defense is to fall to our knees, go to war, and bring, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers in high places. What is energizing and empowering these people who have opened their lives up to all kinds of depravity And that's what we have to attack. If you read in Daniel, when Gabriel is sent to give him a message, he is delayed by the kings of Persia. And we get a little insight into what's taking place in the spiritual realm, the warfare, and our part in that is to pray. I don't understand fully, but I do know that we are called to pray. So that's the strongest weapon in our arsenal, is to pray against the drag queens, pray against the, you know what? The children of darkness have a lot of faith in their prayers. They start doing their mumbo jumbo and they really believe that things are going to happen. There's a lot of faith in that. They have faith in the power of darkness. How much more should we have faith in the power of light? Is God not the one who formed the heavens and the earth and everything in it? We need to have real faith in God and what he can do, which is much greater. If we have faith, we will be victorious. 2 or more of us can send 10,000 fleeing. We have to take hold of that kind of power. So the first thing is to pray. The second thing is to speak up. The time for those apathetic, wishy-washy, quiet, little cowardly, tutti-frutti Christians, that time is gone. Those people are being marched off into darkness, where they attend these buildings that are pagan temples now, where they have rainbow flags and ordained homosexual ministers and all that. Those people who are tutti-frutti and wishy-washy are being marched into the darkness. And you know what? I feel bad for them. Maybe the Lord will call to them, but they're the same as the rest of society. They're in darkness, they're lost, and they will face the wrath of a God who judges. So our second line of defense is to stand up and speak up. The gospel is not a popular thing, but the gospel is a powerful thing. When Jesus sent 72 people out to preach the gospel, they were casting out demons, they were healing the sick, they saw signs and wonders, and when they returned rejoicing, Jesus said, I saw Satan cast down from heaven like lightning. I mean, think about that. The power of the gospel in the hands of 72 people just like you and me. If 2 can send 10,000 fleeing, 72 can shake the heavens. That's the kind of power that's packaged in the gospel. And if we start taking hold of the power that God has given us access to, we're going to see mighty things. We need to, so what if we were handed a generation of Christianity that lacks faith and doesn't believe in the power? It's no excuse for us to sit around feeling sorry for ourselves. This is the time to start turning back to the power of God and seeing with our own eyes what it can do. You know, faith grows with experience. It really does. To each is given a measure of faith. If you have weak faith, it doesn't mean you're stuck with weak faith. It means you test it and watch it grow. It's a very practical thing. A chair will hold you. You have faith because over time you've experienced over and over again that chair holds you. So your faith is very strong. You don't even question it. It's the same with God. Believe God, and as you see things transpire, your faith grows. My God has done many things in my life, and my God will continue to do many profound things in my life. I have absolute faith in that. I have no question. I'm going to see more signs and wonders, more miracles. I know it. And it's not like I'm Benny Hinn. I just trust. I just believe. My faith has grown because I've seen God do many things, and I'm going to see God do many more things too. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this inspires you to turn to God and say, okay, God, I'm ready to submit. I'm ready to humble myself. I'm ready to accept your power so you can do your will in my life. God bless you, brothers and sisters.